Hello, everyone. Welcome to On the Move, a show where we share transportation sales and marketing success stories. I'm Jennifer Carpus Romain, Executive Director at TMSA, which is a trade nonprofit educating and connecting marketing and sales professionals in transportation and logistics. And today on the show, I have Sarah Ahern, who is partner at Path Growth, who is a researching customer, voice of the customer, all of those great things, a company who focuses in the transportation market. Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Jen. I am so excited to be here.
Me too. And you have appeared on TMSA LinkedIn Lives before we launched the official podcast, but welcome to On the Move. Glad to have you on the official TMSA podcast now. But what is going on new and exciting in the world of Sarah and Path Growth and logistics?
It's been a great year. We continue to partner with lots of amazing supply chain companies to help them learn more about their customers and the markets faster than the competition and turn that into action faster than the competition, because we are big believers that data is only as good as the action it drives. And so with that in mind, it was our pleasure to be able to partner with TMSA this year on the benchmark, which was implemented in 2022. And so we had the chance to re-benchmark in 2024 to get a better understanding of where sales and marketing in logistics is today.
Mm-hmm. So TMSA has actually had their benchmarking study. I think the first one was 2014. The first one that was under kind of my leadership was 2022. And that's when you guys came in to TMSA. So it's probably the first one you were super familiar with. But that's one of my personal favorite things about the benchmarking study is it's a member-only resource. So only our members are the people who get to have the full view into that benchmarking study. And it's about marketing and sales specifically for this industry. So what is driving people? How many people do they have on their teams? What software are they using? How are they integrating it? How many teams do they have? How are the teams broken up? All of this information is all inside of that. And I love because you can benchmark against what other people are doing in the industry today, but you can also then go back through those older ones and benchmark from the past, which I think is really impactful. And I know for me, the 2022 one was the first one I was ever really a part of. And thinking then that the one before that was 2020, and that came out like right before COVID hit. So it's been interesting to tell those stories and really see how things change and how some things stay the same. But I think it's really important for us at TMSA to partner with a partner who has this research capabilities more than we do here at headquarters, but really help us not just collect the data, which you guys were awesome in that part. We did collect the data for the survey over the summer. And we were just talking before we went live that we were super pumped because we actually doubled the sample size, the people who turned in those surveys. So that was like a huge win for me. Just, from seeing all those results in and being able to really look at that data more intently. That was a lot of rambling for me. I'm sorry, I just get excited about research and data, but so we are now in data crunching mode for the benchmarking study. It will come live next month in October. We'll be releasing it before the TMSA Executive Summit. And we will actually be you and I will be speaking together at the summit about this deep dive and what it actually means and how people can engage with this and what does it mean, and you're in your budget season, what should you be expecting, what other people are doing. If you're interested in that presentation or any part of Executive Summit, you can register at events.tmsatoday.org. It is October 10th through 11th in Hoboken, New Jersey. I'm really excited about it. But what are you finding as you dive into the research? What's a little bit of a sneaky peek for us?
Yeah. Well, I think there's one important, interesting piece of context that I feel like we run into. We collaborate with so many supply chain marketers, so many supply chain salespeople, especially in logistics. And so much of the work that we see them do is capability building. They're always iterating their processes to respond to kind of the changing way customers want to interact with us from a marketing and sales standpoint, the changing markets. And so from a benchmark standpoint, we are big believers that just being able to understand what other organizations are doing and where they're having successes and where they're having challenges, and benchmarking yourself against that can have a really powerful prioritizing effect. There are hundreds of things we could do. What are going to be the things that drive the most value for our organizations? And so this benchmarking study should serve to focus us in a little bit on that. And with that in mind, I think one of the most interesting insights from my perspective is that in 2022, price and service were the top reasons why organizations were losing deals. And that was definitive. The data was very clear that the majority of people that were responding to that benchmark saw that in their deals. And then when we re-benchmarked this year with a much bigger sample and, had the opportunity to compare, we saw a really significant shift in the top reasons why organizations are losing deals. And it gives marketing and sales the opportunity and hopefully the platform to say, we can be the tip of the spear. We can be the ones that partner with our internal teams that listen to customers to help us better prepare so that we aren't losing deals for reasons that we could potentially address. Mm-hmm. So that's some of the information we'll be able to share in the presentation and then for members in the benchmarking report.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I think it's so important that it is interesting to see that shift because I think so many of the conversations is always around, well, what's the price point? Is it the price?
Right.
What if we just lower our prices? That's going to cut into our margins, but is that what we need to do to succeed? And it's looking like no longer is that even really what should be first on the table when thinking about it, which I think is incredibly important. I do think that benchmarking is important too, because I think on the sales and marketing side, especially, we get a lot of people in those roles who may not have as much freight experience. And so how do you get up to speed quickly on figuring out what's going on in this market versus an industry that you may have been in before? And so having this type of content, this type of resource is incredibly important.
Mm-hmm. Completely agreed. I think the benchmark really sets up the need for marketers and salespeople to continue to be efficient, because another key insight that's continued from 2022 is that organizations don't anticipate doing a lot more hiring. And so we have to even be more effective to be able to provide value for the organizations we work for as marketing and salespeople. If we're trying to build capabilities with limited resources and we don't anticipate getting more people on our team, it just puts more pressure on us to be prioritized and focused. And so to your point, using this tool, which is so many sales and marketers coming together and giving feedback to help us better understand.
Mm-hmm. Besides this benchmarking study for sales and marketers, is there any other research in the industry right now that you think would be really beneficial for them to be looking at, especially in, this entering budget season, in the middle of budget season for a lot of people?
Yeah. Logistics specifically, supply chain in general, but logistics specifically, there are so many great market data resources. FreightWaves is a great place to find better information about the market. And I think as much as we can, I'll say what I've seen with the really effective marketing and sales teams that I work with is that the ones that excel, that outperform the market, have a really keen eye on their industries and on the trends of those industries. And we can get a lot of that information for free. We can start with tools like ChatGPT and Gemini just to get a sense of what potential resources are out there from our particular industries. And then we can go out and validate that. I would never recommend stopping there because we can't completely trust our AI friends just yet, but we could go out there and start to gather better information so we can speak to our customers with more understanding of the challenges they're facing, and we can resource ourselves to focus on potential growth markets or places that seem to be growing so we can be, again, even more focused and prioritized in our roles.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really good advice. Something that has stayed with me since I did an interview with Jared Orton, the president of the Savannah Bananas, before he came to Elevate in 2023. And he said one of the ways, because people asked him, how do you keep up on trends? How do you know what's going on? which I was like, he's the president. He has people that does that, right?
Right.
But he was super smart and he answered, which I was
Mhm.
really impressed by. But he said one of the things that he does is go on like earnings calls and look at earnings
Yeah,
reports for companies like Google. And because you can see where
100%.
they're putting their money in. So is it in AI? Is it in different types of efficiencies? Because if the technology partners that you rely on are putting an emphasis in this space, then your capabilities can increase in these spaces. And what does that look like for you? Or are they not putting their resources into better developing tools that you would need to succeed? And what does that mean for you? And I just remember thinking about that and being like, wow, this guy is really smart. Like, that's really good advice for sales and
Mhm.
marketing people, especially as they're building their investments in the next year.
100%. And that's why using something like a Chat GPT or Gemini or some sort of AI tool, if you are new to reading data like that, or if you're new to finding data like that, can be so tremendously helpful. You can input reports into it, it can summarize it for you, you can ask it where to find information, because it is overwhelming. Data can be very overwhelming when you're new to it and trying to leverage it to make good decisions. And so using those kind of tools, and we always recommend trying to kind of socialize it internally with people who have been in your organization a long time, who are in charge of implementing these products and services, kind of giving them the opportunity to respond to it and helping you prioritize. Again, that's really the game here. How can we learn more about our customers, our markets faster, and then turn it into action faster than the competition? Really, the only long-term competitive advantage we have, and marketing and salespeople are so well positioned to sit in that place in the organization.
I agree. And to people who then aren't having their sales and marketing leads have seats at the table, I think
Yeah.
that's an incredible miss because
Mhm.
they are the people who are paying attention to those trends and trying to utilize it and utilize it and move things forward. So really getting that input and relying on them is important.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Do you find that people can make data say what they want it to, or does the data always speak for itself? Like, if you're trying to use data for a use case to like say, oh, this is why we need to invest here or do this, like how to best actually utilize data to be what it's actually saying and not like manipulating it to be what you want it to say.
Yes, you're hitting at the heart of one of the problems of data. Of course, of course, that was a good softball for me. Um, 100%. I'm sure we all have had our own personal experiences where we've been able to look at data and have it say what we wanted it to say, or we've been recipients of information that maybe was twisted slightly to tell a particular story, and not maliciously. We all bring our biases to the table when we're reading information. And that's why I mentioned it just a second ago. I am such a big believer in, as much as we can, taking a cross-functional approach and trying to bring stakeholders to the table, trusted stakeholders that you have good relationships with, to help us break out of our own personal bias. It's hard to really read the label from inside the jar, right? We can only read what we can, but if we get a good group of people with differing perspectives around the table, it can be such a helpful way to make sure that we're doing our best to interpret the data in the way that it's telling us, in the story that it's telling us. And I think that you get a lot of win from that in general, bringing cross-functional perspective into marketing and sales where you can. It's kind of like a rising tides lifts all boats. You're socializing the work you're doing, you're providing value to your team members. In turn, they're providing value to you. And so it's just a great way to build that culture of data-driven decision making, but also help to build that culture of competency and capability in marketing and sales too.
Hmm. Yes, I think a cross functionality is great because I think the best thing anyone can do is have different voices, different perspectives,
Mhm.
in that conversation, both once you have the data, but also before you collect the data, if it's a survey you're doing yourself, which was part of the process that we did. Like, we brought the survey into our membership committee and was like, you guys are members, you talk, your freight companies, you talk to members, what do you think about these questions? Is there anything that we're missing? Like, is the topic of hybrid versus virtual versus all in person, is that still like a hot topic for people? Do people still have those conversations? And I think that's really impactful too, because if you want to have quality data, you need to be asking the right questions as well.
Yes. Yeah. We see so many organizations trying to, and I say this completely without judgment because we just do our best, right? So many organizations try and either implement surveys or get data gathering processes in a silo, and it's just really hard to get anybody to take action based on that, right? Everybody wants to understand, what questions did we ask? Who did we ask? How did we do this? Rightfully so they can feel trust in the process. And so to your point, including in this process, the membership committee, the education committee, whatever committees we were able to connect with to get feedback was tremendously helpful to make sure this tool is valuable for people. And that process can be taken out and implanted in any organization. Same kind of process. Can we get a decent group, a decent selection of people around the table to give us feedback on what we're trying to do?
Absolutely. And I think the other really important piece when you're collecting the data, and this is, any marketer would know that it's like the amount of time you're asking people needs to be directly correlated to whatever their output is going to be. It's the same as like, do you put this piece of content behind a gate or not? Because, what are people going to give you for what you're giving them? And I think that was really important too. And I know we specifically put like, this survey is going to take at least 30 minutes. Like, just know you're going to be spending some time here. But we then get so much information that we can help you and show you bits and pieces and thank them for their work. But I think that was really important too, which I don't know if that's something that we've done in the past. And so, or at least we didn't a couple years ago when we did it. And so I think that is really important too, because I feel like no one loves taking surveys.
No.
It's not something people are like, you know what I want to do today? I want to sit and think about my budget and how much money I spent last year on this, this, and this. But doing that, being open and honest about the time frame that it's going to give them, and then what they're going to receive in the end, and why it's so important and why we're asking these questions. We plan to use the data and what we won't be using the data for. I think those are all really important to make people want to participate.
Yeah. And there are some insights that stay static from year to year, right? That provides a good foundation on which to build. We can see that there's some predictability in the fact that, budgets tend to be crunched, right? A lot of ROI is expected from sales and marketing departments. So it gives sales and marketers a place to understand how to function from there. And if we could set that expectation that they can invest their information so they can get good perspective out of a study like this, I think it can be a win all around. And membership organizations like TMSA doing these or using these opportunities to better level set the industry can be such a valuable thing. I say as a biased TMSA member myself.
I do. I think research and education is really, really important as member organizations, but also just being part of any industry and learning what that and how to apply it, which is part of why I'm really excited that we do get to co-present at the Executive Summit this year, talking about these findings and what it actually means, what we found, what leaders should be doing about it. So I'm curious, what are you looking forward to about coming to the Executive Summit and being able to co-present and talk through the data that you've been crunching for the past couple months?
My favorite part of this entire process is first understanding the why. And so that's what you can expect from our session is as much of the context as the metrics themselves as we can bring to the table. And then to get feedback from people who are doing this work about their experience and their why. And so that's really what I'm looking forward to. We've taken the data, we've run the advanced analyses, we've analyzed everything to statistical significance, so we can feel really confident in the insights that we're going to discuss together. And then that's the opportunity to hear from, especially a group of leaders like this, what their personal experience is, where their challenges are. Like, for example, and we've talked about this, it's probably no surprise to anybody that it's been much harder in 2024 to achieve sales quotas. And so getting feedback and context from this group of leaders about how that's impacting their organizations and what that means just makes a benchmarking study like this even more valuable. And so that discussion is number one on my list for the Executive Summit.
I'm excited too. And I think that co-presenting also gives different perspectives as well. Like, that's what we talked about, two different perspectives, two people. You live in the data, you see the data. I talk to members and I go to different events and I talk to people and what they're doing. And so I have a little more of like the hearsay type content. But how does that, like what I've been hearing in the market for the past year, what people have been telling me anecdotally, how does that actually match up to what the data is actually saying, so we don't manipulate it in a certain way? And what do we think we should do to move forward? So I'm really excited for that, and to be able to give two different perspectives on it and what we see in that data. I know the last time we did that in 2022, that was one of my favorite parts, is looking at all of the data that our previous partner had given us and then being like, this is what I think that means, and like, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm hearing. I'm not at all surprised that this is happening. Oh, but this is, like, I remember from like 2020 to 2022, the rise of TikTok was so substantial. Like 2020 wasn't even its own category, and then by 2022 it was like one of the predominant like social sites that people were engaging in, which was kind of crazy. So you can see how some of those things change and some stay the same, and getting that different perspective, which is really great.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great call out about trend, right? We don't want to overreact to one data point at one point in time. We've gone through tremendous change over these past few years. But if we start to see a trend, again, that just gives us a good stable ground to start building on. And we can only do that when people participate in that study. And that's really the other call out I wanted to make, is that if you are a salesperson, if you are a marketer, and as a member of TMSA and you get the benchmarking report, that's a great opportunity to hand raise and say, there's information that I would really like to see in these benchmarking studies that would be really valuable for me. And that allows us to take that feedback. We're big believers, feedback is a gift, to take that feedback and continue to iterate this study to make it more powerful year over year. Not only using those benchmarking best practices so we can see those trends, but incorporating things that are pressing and important decisions you have to make as leaders in your organizations, giving you the data you need to make those decisions.
Absolutely. And I would say from a headquarter level, I feel that way. Feedback is a gift too. And that's including, like, even if there's data that wouldn't fit in this benchmark, like sales and marketing benchmarking study that we do, there's other types of resource, other types of data points that you would like to be getting from TMSA. All of that information is really helpful to hear as well, because we can then continue. This is the big research project that we do, but maybe that's an area that we should grow in, or what does that look like if the members really want that from us? So that's always really helpful to know for us too. And then Path Growth has actually had a present at Executive Summit. So we started this event back in 2022, and you guys came, like, you heard about the annual conference, and then you called me like a month after, and you were like, what is this thing? I hear you have another thing. Can we be a part of it? And so you guys came in 2022, you came back in 2023, and of course you're coming in 2024. For someone who hasn't come, what type of value do you think that this summit brings to attendees?
Yeah, it's a great call out. So we have been working logistics since our company was founded 40 years ago. Our first client was a logistics company, DCI Logistics. And so when I saw that there was not only a membership organization that focused on sales and marketing in logistics, but also a great annual event, it was just kind of like a bright beacon for me to find out more information. And the Executive Summit in particular is such a great kind of small format focused event for decision makers. And the discussion, that's kind of part of the reason why I called out discussion being one of the things I'm looking most forward to at this event. The discussion can be so robust in a way that, you can't necessarily get for everybody in a bigger event. And so I think having those decision makers around the table, those people that are really pushing that capability in their organization, hearing their challenges, their successes, and seeing very characteristic of logistics, seeing people share best practices with the mindset of, rising tides lifting all boats. That's been my experience at the Executive Summit and what keeps us coming back year over year. And so we're really looking forward to being there for the third year in a row and presenting this benchmark. Yeah. I just kept talking.
Okay. So we will edit the whole out, but if you want to kind of just pick up from where you were.
If you
wondering, like the rising tides here all ship, where you're going, like in getting together that the collaboration and discussion.
Yeah, that's what I said, like decision makers coming together, sharing best practices, with the idea of giving people the opportunity to improve their organizations. That's why I think the Executive Summit is such a great event. In complement to the annual event, which I think is such a great, broad and comprehensive view of the industry and things that sales and marketing people are concerned about or excited about. And this really provides that discussion and small group focus that can be so valuable.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I think the Elevate and the Executive Summit both have different vibes, but because Executive Summit is smaller, is geared towards that higher level executive, people that are, in charge of their budgets, in charge of their teams, thinking through what's coming next. And Elevate is kind of for everybody at any point in their logistics, marketing, or sales career. So it's really great to have those two different events to serve both of those things. So my last question for you. So typically I ask the same question to everyone, but since I've asked you my more traditional question in the past, I changed it up just a little bit. So instead of telling us what you could do if you could go back in time and tell your younger self anything you want, I'm going to instead ask you, if you could go back in time and really relive any day of your life, what would it be and why?
Oh my gosh, that is just one day.
Just one day.
That is a question. Just one day. I think I have a little bit of recency bias here, but last summer, so my dad is British, and last summer, for the first time ever, we took the whole family, so my siblings, their partners, our kids, my dad and mom, we all went back to this kind of small ocean town where my dad spent a good portion of his young adult life, St. Ives in Cornwall. And it is just so epically beautiful. It's such a kind of like very British town on the seaside, built into kind of the hills, and you can walk downtown and go to the pubs. And we had an especially beautiful day where all of us got to watch the sunset together. Oh. And if I had to choose anything right off the top of my head, that was the first thing that popped in my mind. I would relive that day again.
Well, that sounds like a lovely day. So I think about that question randomly from time to time, which is where it came in. I was like, oh, what am I going to ask her? I've already asked my main question. Because it's not like you get to change anything. You just live it. And it's what is that first kind of memory that comes to your head of a really good day.
And I am a big believer in community. If I'm just with my people, that's all I really need. And everything else is icing on the cake. And so that was a great day of just being with my people.
Well, great. Well, if you want to be one of Sarah's people and spend time with her October 10th through 11th in Hoboken, New Jersey, and hear about all the benchmarking that she's been doing for our benchmarking report, you can still register for Executive Summit. October 10th or 11th in Hoboken, New Jersey. And we will be doing our presentation together, but we also have people coming to talk about commercial growth. We have a shippers panel. We have a sustainability speaker. We do have a specific sales workshop and a marketing workshop for leaders, all kinds of great content coming. So, and of course, great networking. And we will be announcing who won the Sales and Marketing Mountain Mover Awards. So all kinds of exciting things. I am excited to share the stage with you and to see you and everybody else in Hoboken. And thank you. Thank you for coming on the show, and I will be seeing you soon.